fostering deeper relationships, influencing behavior change, developing resilience. You're about to start winning. Here is your host, Christine Bright.
Welcome to Parenting Game. I am so glad you are here. So we are starting some episodes on generosity. As I work with parents, I get that question a lot of how do you teach generosity to your kids? So I started researching it and came across a great book, Raising Resilience by Christopher Willard. And he has some great insights on generosity. One of the things I learned is we all know being generous helps others and helps our community. But we may not be aware of what generosity does for us as an individual. So there are several hormones that are activated during acts of generosity. You have dopamine, which is responsible for helping you experience happiness. We have oxytocin, and this is called the love hormone. So it actually helps you feel more loving towards others. And then serotonin, which we all know about. This is the mood hormone. This is the one that helps you feel happy, that helps you have a better feeling of well-being. And what's interesting about the serotonin is this is not just in your brain, it actually runs through your whole body. So acts of generosity are actually good for your entire well-being and your entire health. So back to the question. How do we teach generosity to our children? Well, in the Raising Resilience book, there is research that shows watching acts of generosity produce the same hormones as if you did the act of generosity. So I recommend to parents start there. Have your kids kind of search around on YouTube for different acts of generosity and then discuss what types of acts of generosity would we like to do? What are the availability out there? So in the next 3 episodes, we are going to share with you some ways that you can open up opportunities of generosity to your child. And today I have Steve Heck from Salvation Army. And you've just recently got a new title, which is a mouthful. I'm handing it over to you to say.
All right. So I'm now the Executive Director of Philanthropy for the Salvation Army here in Dane County.
And of course, everybody knows Salvation Army because of the red kettles. So I have always had the question, what happens to that money? Does it just stay in Dane County? Is it pooled together? So just give us a little background on Salvation Army and how that money is handled that comes in from those red kettles.
Sure. All the money stays here in Dane County that we get in the kettles. Our goal is about $550,000 for the Christmas campaign. Last year, in a pandemic year, we exceeded our goal. People in Dane County are just so generous.
Yes.
And we were down a lot of bell ringers because of the pandemic. Mm-hmm. So we're kind of getting ready, gearing up, for that. But all the money stays here, provides funding for all our programs. So we have the only single women's emergency shelter in Dane County. We have the only emergency family shelter in Dane County. We have a community center. We do a lot of there's like 23 different programs that we have. We try to, we have a diversion program where if you call in and say, looks like I'm going to be homeless and I don't know what to do tonight, we have a case manager that works with you, says, well, where did you stay last night? How can we help? What things can we do? It might be a gift certificate for food so they can help out with some of the expenses at home, might be helping with an electric bill, but we're able to keep them where they are. So they're not taking up another space in the shelter where we can put somebody who doesn't have other options, in there. So we've really tried to stay on the cutting edge. And, this last year, I think a lot of people, we've had to pivot a lot. Mm-hmm. And we try lots of things to see what works, what's going to benefit the people that we serve. But our goal always is to make sure that we meet the needs of the people, here that struggle and don't know where else to go.
That's awesome. And that, and that's good to know, to clarify that if you're in Dane County and you're putting money in that red kettle, that's staying in our community.
Yeah, you're helping your neighbors.
Yes. So, talking about having opportunities for kids to volunteer, signing up to do the red kettle. Mm-hmm. If you're 16 or older, you can do that on your own.
Yes.
You don't need to have an adult. Then anybody under the age of 16 needs to do that with an adult.
Right.
But I'm guessing there's always a need. Never, it's like, no, we don't need you this year. You're always looking for people to do that. First of all, let's share, there's a special website for them to go sign up to do Red Kettles, correct?
That's correct. They can go to ringbellsdane.org. And I can fill out the stuff to sign up on it. It's pretty simple.
Okay.
But if there's also a phone number on there, so if you're struggling with it or that, you can let us know. But there's ways on there where groups can sign up, and so we have like the DECA groups here in Sun Prairie at the upper middle school and the high school.
Yes.
They ring. I started a DECA competition, so we're competing against like Stoughton and Wanakee, and so the kids love to compete.
Yeah.
We do a battle of the banks, so the banks can compete against each other for a traveling trophy.
Okay.
So it's just really try to build some extra excitement into it. But yeah, you can go on there. You can sign up by yourself. With the pandemic, it's a little harder to have a lot of people, in one spot at a time because we're trying to keep everybody safe. Obviously, we've got hand sanitizers and masks and all those kind of things at each location. But you can go in, and if your church group or your youth group or something wants to do it, you can sign up as a group, and then everybody just kind of tags onto that.
Okay.
So at the end, you can say, "Wow, we rang for 100 hours."
Yeah.
You know.
And so with keeping the distancing, if your group wants to do it, maybe be creative and just do smaller groups within your group. Like not, if you have a youth group, you're not going to have all 30
right,
people
2 or
there
3 kids there at a time.
And maybe
usually
take a day and pan it out.
Yeah.
The other thing that I like about, I love that the competitive piece. I mean, it's always fun, brings another edge. But you've also seen how people on their own have been really creative with the bell ringing to just entice consumers and stuff to give. Share with a couple of those. You were sharing with me, and it was
it's
really
crazy too. People wear costumes when they come. Like
I have not seen that yet.
Oh yeah, and I always try to get people to send me pictures, when they're out ringing. Because we had one person was in like a Christmas tree thing. Another one was dressed up like a Santa Claus, kind of thing. But we've had some families that when they started out with young kids, had their kids there ringing and whatever. Now their kids have kids, and they're all ringing. So they'll get together. And they have their own bells.
Oh my goodness.
That they like to use and they bring. And God bless them. And they're there at the same time, and they love it because they get to see people around the holidays that maybe they wouldn't have caught up with. And so they get to say hi. They thank thank them for giving, that kind of thing. And it's just really been, a lot of them have said it's really rewarding. And I've yet to find a person that rang bells that didn't feel really good. It goes back to your points.
Yeah.
But people will come up, they'll thank them, for giving, and ringing and giving. I mean, your time is the most precious thing you have.
Yes.
And so and we have people that give 120 hours they ring during a kettle campaign, and I mean it's really pretty incredible. But they'll tell them stories about how the Salvation Army helped their family. They wouldn't have had a Christmas when they were a kid if it wasn't for that. Or a lot of military stories. My dad was in the Army and he loved the Salvation Army. They came and helped him. So these people get all these stories, and it's funny because a couple of family members rang, not even here in Dane County, but in other places, and they're like, "Oh, that was the most incredible experience, and I signed up for 2 more shifts." And so you're giving a lot, but you're also receiving a lot back, and especially at a holiday time when it can be a little traumatic for people sometimes, and they stress out about things. It's a way to just kind of get away and go, "I'm helping other people."
Yeah, and as I said, we're learning that generosity is not only good for our community, but it's good for us as well, in our health. So we're all familiar with the red kettles, and how that works. But, as I started talking with you guys more about doing this episode, I found out there is a lot more than, I kind of had the mindset of this money comes in and then you kind of, divvy it out maybe to other resources that need money that are serving the community. I did not realize what you guys all do, especially with getting people placed, and if they're homeless, getting them back on their feet. So please share about this, because you have several shelters in the area that I did not know about.
Yeah, and we're horrible about telling the good things we do. I mean, it's we just go on and do more.
Yeah,
it's like we just need to do it, and we got to get better at that. And I appreciate this opportunity to do that. But so you got to have shelters because there's always going to be homeless people. And, some people were, they're, got evicted, they had, their electricity turned off, they had whatever. So it's one thing happened, they had a car repair or something and now they didn't have money to pay whatever. So they come to us. So the shelters are really the safety net. So they're safe. They're in an opportunity where they can work with a case manager. So all of our single women that stay at the shelter and all our families work with a case manager. We even, like some of the diversion ones, will work with a case manager as well to try to identify the barriers that cause them to become homeless, and then what resources are out there for them to utilize so that they can become back in a permanent housing but be stable. It doesn't do us any good to get somebody back for 30 days or 60 days and then they're homeless again.
Yes.
We work with them on budgeting. We work with them on helping find jobs, working on with their resumes, all the other things that that everybody struggles with all the time anyway, but to try to help them understand, there is a way to get out of this situation, and especially with families for the kids, because we want to break that cycle. So we work with the families on a regular basis, and then we have a Dawns program that we started where we actually will take the families, we work with some of the different building, people around that have apartments. We kind of, if you will, co-sign, we guarantee for them, hey, you give these people a chance, we'll guarantee it for 6 months. We help them with a little bit in the beginning, maybe a security deposit, those things, but then you kind of less and less over time until they become sufficient on their own. And they've had, and it's nice when all of a sudden you can get a little ahead.
Yeah.
I always thought when somebody's on unemployment, why wouldn't you extend it for another 30 days just to let them get a little bit of put away for when they have a little struggle so they, they're
it's
good?
Like, I'm working, but I don't have an emergency fund. I'm still one step away from going backwards again.
Yes.
So, well, there you go. You got some legislation to do.
I wouldn't be a good politician. But so a lot of the things, and every person that comes through and every family is different, and they have different needs, different challenges, and are in a different place, when they come. So our case managers do an incredible job of meeting with each of them individually, to try to figure out what it is, that goes. And we're running, like, depending on which program, 93, 95% success, where they're a year later, 2 years later, are still in their housing. And some have actually moved from where they were to a little nicer, place. And a little bigger because they might have 3 kids or something, and so they were in a 2-bedroom, and now they get to a 3-bedroom. So they can always come back to us if they're struggling with something and say, can I talk to one of the case managers about this? So we're always a resource back for them because our goal is to make sure that they stay successful, through the programs and don't have to come back to the shelter. And we do have a couple ladies that have come back. They got in an abusive relationship and whatever, and they needed to get out. They had nowhere to go. They had no resources. They came to us. She just spoke. One of the ladies just spoke at our tin cup lunch, and she talked about. She goes, "I knew I had a safe place to go."
Yeah.
And then now she's in her own apartment again, and she's successful, and so appreciative. And it always amazes me how brave these people are.
Yes.
And how willing they are to share the trials and tribulations that they went through. And they're so stinking happy on the end because they've gotten out of it. I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't. They're just so strong. Yeah.
And this takes that little bit of support.
Yeah.
So how many shelters or facilities do you guys have now?
So we have currently our single women's shelter is a 24/7 shelter. When the pandemic came, we had because they changed the beacon to men. During the day, so we had to have a place for the ladies to be during the day. So we're 24/7 there. We're running close to 70 single women there right now, or somebody that identifies as a woman can also stay there. It'll probably continue to go up as the weather gets colder. That's always, we see a little bit of a uptick there. And then we have the family shelter, which we just opened in May, and we have 35 families in there. We have another house where we have 8 women, single women that are in there, and they can stay for 2 years. They pay a small program fee, but it helps them a lot of them are going back to school or they're working on getting a better job or building a little bit of savings.
Yeah.
So it's a good place for them to come. They still get case management on a regular basis. It helps them be stronger when they go out into the workforce or get a department on their own. And within a week or so, once they graduate and kind of go out there, we have another person that we move in to work with it. So those are our shelters that we have, and
You offer some great, and I just love all the hearing about all the support that you give them too. I mean, you're looking to make them successful. You're not looking just to get them by.
Right.
And I think that's a really important piece, for people to understand.
Yeah. Otherwise, it's a revolving door.
Yeah.
And you never help them help themselves.
Yes, and that's the great. So we know about the red buckets. We know about that money goes towards those shelters. What other ways do you help the community? You had kind of mentioned, like, if somebody is in their own apartment but having a little trouble and like the heating bill may not be able to get paid. Are those type of services as well that people can come to the Salvation Army
there's
for?
in the outlying communities other than Madison. In Madison, they would come right to the shelter, but we have what we call service extension. So here in Sun Prairie, it's at the police department.
Okay.
So if somebody's needs a little help with something, they work with our service extension people to make sure that they meet the criteria, for those. So it could be food, it might be a hotel that they might need, something like that. It's very different depending on where what their needs are and what the community is and how close they are to Madison and those kind of things. So we try to work because typically when they come, it's crisis time.
Yeah.
They tried to figure it out. Okay, I can't figure it out. Where can I go for help? So so that also helps fund those. They're really not those needs,
Okay.
That are out there, and in each one of the communities we have somebody, and the police all know who they are,
Okay.
and a lot of times there are the police, it might
Yeah.
be the fire too, but
Okay.
So they typically somebody will reach out to the police department saying I need help or whatever, and then they'll
they work
get them
with you
directed to the
guys.
right people. So yeah.
Awesome. So we have lots of programming, of course, that needs funding. So we talked about the buckets, and again, we're talking about what I'm talking about is helping parents, build that within their kids to take initiative, to be generous on their own. So you have to be 16, to do the bells and stuff on your own. But you also have some creative programming for those kids who are under the age of 16. And one of those was penny drives. So can you share with me how those have taken shape and how those have been implemented?
Yeah, well, actually they've been driven by the kids. Coming to us, going to their teacher, then coming to us and saying, how can we help?
Yeah.
So they may do a collection at school. At like the Catholic schools or some of the other private schools where they have to wear a uniform, they make a donation in a thing, maybe they get to wear jeans that day.
Oh,
or they get to wear
okay.
a hat, I mean,
Some outside the norm.
just something different that, there's a little something in it for them too, but then they see at the end how much they gave.
Yeah.
We've had ones where kids will, they maybe get an allowance, and so they work and they take some of their allowance and they put it in their, bucket, or they put it in their piggy bank or whatever, and then at the end of whatever period of time they want, then they bring it in, to us. And I always try to get, some of these kids will bring in like a gallon ice cream thing of pennies, and then they pour them all in the kettles. Those kettles are heavy when they got all that in it. So I'm going to pick these things. I'm like, oh my gosh, and they're like, oh yeah, this little kid came by and dumped all these, pennies and nickels and whatever in there. But obviously had been collecting it for since the last year.
Yeah.
And anytime they had a little extra change or something jingled in their pocket, they would put it in there, knowing that when Christmas time came, they would come and put it in one of the kettles. And so they're really innovative. We've had some where some of the parents have said, well, whatever you collect and you give, then I'll match it.
Oh, that's a good
and so it's a little
incentive.
extra incentive for the kids, to do a little bit more, because then they can actually give a little bit more. And I think, to your point, it shows that the parents are also giving.
Yes.
So they're in it together, and I think the kids like that. especially when they can make Dad have to fork out an extra 10 or something,
yes,
you know,
like
for it.
I'm going to work really hard because you're going to empty your wallet. And so, the nice thing about the penny drive is, kiddos can just think out of the box. Like, do I want to do this for the month of my birthday, where everybody brings pennies? I can work with my school, to do a penny drive. I could work with, any group that I'm with, whether it's a youth group or, Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts or whatever, to run this penny drive. And I think it's really important for, these younger kids to think of, like, how to make it a competition or, just fun things that they can earn or, the typical, the youth pastor has to color his hair or shave his hair, come up with all those fun things.
Well, and they've done like bake sales where they had people bring in, stuff from their classroom, and then they, would go at lunchtime and all the money from the bake sale went to us and one of the other, like a food pantry or something like that, And so it was really, kids are so great. I mean,
they are.
And they know what the other kids like to do.
Yes.
They want the snickerdoodles or they want whatever, and so they'll pay big money for them, so bring them in.
We know what's hot this season.
That's right.
It's, the snickerdoodles. Or I've seen now the Rice Krispie treats have taken on a whole new world where they're made out of the Cocoa Puffs and and I'll look at my teeth just hurt looking at it, but I know those would be a hot seller.
Yeah.
So going back to, another way that families can get their kids involved. So we got the kettles, sign up for ringing bells. We got, kids can do penny drives. But there's also a lot of needs at those shelters. Mm-hmm. And this was really interesting. When I was talking to Taylor, your communications director, she gave me a great line because I said, okay, so at these shelters, there's kids too. And they're needing games, brand new toys. The other thing that I thought was really interesting that I have never thought to give, but like the art kits. And, while we were chit-chatting, you brought up a good point. When you give a kid an art kit, the parent has a break for a little bit. So that's really good. But then, you always get the question, well, what do they need? Like, what do I give? And Taylor gave the best line. Have your kids buy what they like. Because we have kids of all ages there. So if your kids like it, a kid their age at the shelter is going to like it.
Yeah.
So some of the things that she brought up, and you can add to it, she had brought up snacks are always needed, new toys, games, and then we talked about the activity kits. And I don't think there was any limitation on that. So even like I think the big thing right now is to make slime, jewelry kits, coloring kits, art kits, all that kind of stuff is welcome.
Yeah, and we have an area where they can come out at the shelter and do some of those projects. In their rooms are fairly small. One of the things when we open the new shelter in May, every time a new kid comes in, they're on the bed that they have is a blanket for them and a teddy bear.
Oh, neat.
Yeah, so it's like it's a welcome, it's a warm thing, and so they've got something that's for them. But yeah, those coloring books are great. I still like to sit and color sometimes when it's just relaxing,
Yeah, it is.
But yeah, so and I think your point of go with your kid, because then you're getting your kids engaged in it, and they love that whatever it is. So when they have it and they know somebody else, they see that in their mind. They see that kid playing with it and having fun. And we had a person that they've done it now, I think 3 years, 4 years, but their kids come with them and they ring bells. So when they're ringing bells, they talk to them about where that money goes. They get in their car to go home. They go, some of the kids that get this were living in their cars. They didn't have a house, to go to. They didn't have all these other things. And then they would take them, to the store, and they could let them, buy whatever. And it was one of their gifts that would have been theirs for Christmas. They get to pick one, and they can pick it all out, and then they can bring it to, to the Darbo office, drop them off, and they know that they're going to go to a kid just like them. So then their parents say on Christmas when they're opening, they're like, can you imagine? I'm going to tear up a little bit.
I know. This is so great. I'm getting goosebumps.
It is so cool. The kid that's opening that at the shelter now is playing with that present you gave them, and it brings it full circle, for those kids.
What a great example
of
how to instill that generosity.
Yeah, because Christmas is crazy. at your house. Stuff's going, like, it's the other thing, right? They'd rather play with the box than the $50 thing you bought. But it brings it back around to what it's really all about.
Yeah, and that is an excellent example. So I'm going to go through the steps again, just because I feel it's so important that they rung the bells and talked about where that money was going, and then when they get in the car, they were talking about how someplace kids don't have a house, like they're living in a car. Then they took them to the store, and one of their Christmas gifts they were picking out to give to another child, and then on Christmas Day, they're discussing like how excited and happy do you think that child is that they got that. Amazing. Yeah. Amazing family, and just such a good, thing for us to follow. Yeah. The other, we're getting close on time, and there's so much more that I want to share. One thing that, would be helpful, if time gets tight, but there's always this point of, you got to start somewhere. If this is something that you want to instill and be part of your family, is generosity as a lifestyle. I don't want to say simple, easy, but it is that you have these welcome baskets that you put together when you've helped somebody rehome. So they're leaving the shelter, now they're going to their home, because they don't have anything, like hangers or a trash can. They're really needing a lot. And you guys have set up a list on Amazon where people can go and click and buy, and then come to you, and you guys will get it to the family in need. Yeah. I think that is just really wonderful. That can be a great place for families to start as they decide how they want to implement generosity into their home. Yeah. And I'm assuming that's up year-round as well. Yeah. Not just at Christmas.
No, it's up year-round. You think about when you go buy laundry detergent, you go buy a mop. It's a lot of money. And if just picture you were homeless 3 months ago. And where are you going to come up with all the money to do all this extra? So it relieves one more burden. It's the washcloths, it's a sponge, it's dish soap. Yeah. Just things that, when you go through and all of a sudden you're like, oh my gosh, it's $200, or whatever.
Or, I bet the families who, kids at college, like all the stuff you got to buy for them now because they're moving out and going to be on their own, times it by 10, for people moving into a new house. Yeah. I also want to quickly just talk about the Adopt a Family program. And you brought up an interesting point. You have the trees that come out at Christmas. But the thing to keep in mind, what you had said, you have people coming, and going in and out. So that tree is only accurate for so long. Right. I mean, that need is there, but you may have others coming in. And again, this was a discussion that I had with Taylor, which I thought was really cool. The thing that I love is you guys are very accessible to the community. You welcome those phone calls of people saying, how, can I help? And I was told that if a family decides, hey, we want to adopt a family, what is really engaging, for the children is for them to know that maybe that family has the same age kids that we have, and that you can actually call in and you guys will work with them, to find a family that may be your same dynamic. Yeah. And then your kids can go and buy, and they'll know. I think you allow, is it sex and age? Is that what they will know?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they're like, oh, I get to go buy a girl like me who's my age, a toy. And I think that's so connecting and so, engaging. Yeah. But when do the trees start coming out for the family?
We're working on them right now. Okay. So a couple things that we did last year is because of the pandemic, a lot of times we'll have different companies. UW Health would always adopt, and they still do, a number of families. But they don't have as many people coming in, to their office as they were before. So we were trying to figure out how do we work with a lot of these other companies. So we did a lot of things virtually. Okay. So we set up a Walmart registry. Okay. We have an angel tree, a virtual angel tree. And so if you see a tag on a tree at one of the locations, or even, like I say, virtually, we try to take what the kids really want, and we try to put those on there. But then we have the, I forget what the unknown angels. And these are the ones that we put together based on the kids' ages and their gender and what typically they're liking. because it'll be for those kids that come in after December 10th,
Okay.
come into the shelter. Well, you don't want them sitting watching everybody else open presents and they go, we got nothing again. So what we do is we try to create angel teas for those kids because we know we're always going to get a number of them that come in. A lot of these, several of the families will be having Christmas in their own apartment for the first time in forever. Well, we thought they might be still at the shelter. So now guess what? I got room for more families. Well, they weren't on the list. So we got to, we try to create some of these things. So it may not have the kid's name on it.
Okay.
But the kids get the stuff.
Steve, thank you so much for your time today. I appreciate you coming in, and we just have a wealth of opportunities, for families to engage, and we thank you for all that you do supporting the Dane County community. And remember, time invested in a child is never wasted.
Thank you for watching The Parenting Game. All episodes of The Parenting Game are available on demand at sunprairiemediacenter.com.